friends, and welcome back to another video. So I don't know if you're anything like me, but the weather has changed and it's starting to get really cold, which means winter is on its way, and I'm one of those people who really struggles with winter. So I always try and make sure I keep my house as warm as possible without breaking the bank, because the last thing I want to do is be spending a heap of money on my utilities just to make sure I stay comfortable in my own home. So that's why today's video, I really want to bring you 30 frugal ways you can stay warm during the winter without breaking the bank. So please make sure to hit that like button, and if you are new, please feel free to join this community where we talk about frugal living, money saving, making money, and of course living a life of financial freedom. So let's just get straight into these tips. Please do make sure to stick right to the end to find out what my bonus tip is as well that could actually save you money. So the first one is to make sure you utilize everything that could keep you warm. So I'm talking about making use of hot water bottles. Instead of switching on the heater, fill up your hot water bottle and then just carry it around the house with you, and that way it'll keep you warm and toasty without necessarily having to switch on the heater. The next one is to make use of blankets. Now, whenever you're just relaxing in the house and you're not moving, it can be easy to feel cold. So instead of switching on the heater, just throw on a blanket and cozy up, and you will start to feel a little bit warmer. If your feet are cold, consider wearing thicker socks. So most people will just wear normal cotton socks, but you can actually get those fluffy socks, which are absolutely perfect for winter time because they keep your feet nice and warm. And whilst you're at it, consider getting yourself some home slippers. Now, I know for a lot of people, they don't have slippers around their house, but I've kind of grown up with slippers in my house. So I never have to worry about not having slippers in my house, but purchase them because not only are they cute, but they'll also add to keep your feet on. And you can imagine if you have those nice fluffy socks and your slippers on, you are winning on both aspects. So consider that. Also, whilst we're on the aspect of clothing, make sure to layer up. It can be so tempting to just wear something light and comfortable in the house, but the reality is if you layer up, you're less likely to switch on the heater. So always go for hoodies, sweatshirts, anything that's of thicker material. And if you want to, you can always put on, for example, leggings, and then you can put your joggers on. And that way you can reduce the need to switch on the heater. Another thing is to consider the type of sheets you have on your bed. So for most of us, we'll just go for normal cotton sheets, but you can actually go ahead and buy some flannel sheets. Or you can get a winter specific mattress protector that will not only protect your mattress, but will also help to keep you warm because it will retain the heat within the mattress. And of course, make sure to use a high tog duvet. So try and make sure you get the highest tog, and that way you're retaining heat within your bed. And that will reduce the temptation to switch on the heater, running it all through the night and racking yourself up a huge bill. And since we're in the region of the bed, please make sure to add extra blankets. If you are struggling with finding yourself a little bit cold at night, you've got your hot water bottle, you've got your fluffy socks, you've got your layered clothing, and if you're still cold, make sure to add an additional blanket. And that way you can keep your bed nice and toasty and warm. This one may seem a little bit out there, but if you are really cold and you're struggling to keep warm, consider wearing gloves and hat in the house. I know for some unspoken rule, we always say that hats and gloves cannot be worn in the house and they need to be worn outside. But if you don't want to switch on a heater, consider just putting on hats, putting on gloves, and just sit under your blanket, right? Right, now, there's certain things that you can also do around your property to make it more efficient and make sure you are keeping the heat in as much as possible. So one thing you could do is seal up all your windows and exterior doors that you are not using with these insulation kits. And they're basically, for the most part, just a plastic sheet covering that you put them over your windows and your doors, and you seal it up with a hairdryer, and basically just keeps the cold air from entering the house. But I would recommend you do that on doors that you're not using and windows that you're not using as well. And that way they create a barrier and prevent the cold draft coming into the house. Another thing you could do is layer up your curtain rail. So if your curtains are really light, then you could add a thermal curtain Alternatively, you can also just change it and use insulated curtains. And that way, when you shut the curtains, they will prevent as much heat loss as possible. So personally, I have 2 types of curtains in my house. I know it seems a bit over the top, 2 curtains, but I do actually have summer spring curtains and winter autumn curtains, because the winter ones are just too heavy for the summer and vice versa, and that way I just can swap them when the seasons change. And then for the doors and windows that you are using, consider using draft stoppers that will help you keep any cold breeze from entering your home. Especially with doors, at the bottom of your door sometimes there is a slight little gap that can allow air to filter through. So if you have a draft stopper, then those can really help in keeping the cold breeze out and also keeping the warm air in your house, because the other thing we don't want to do is to lose all the heat in your home. Another thing you can do is to make sure all the edges of your windows are sealed and they're caulked appropriately. One thing you can do is just light up a candle and run it across your windows to see if there's any draft coming in, and then where there is, caulk it appropriately, and that way you will seal off any holes and any opportunity for cold air to come through. Another thing is, whilst we're on the topic of candles, one thing you can actually do is to light up a few candles in your room, close the door, and you'll be surprised how much candles can heat up a room. Obviously, making sure you're doing it in a safe way so that you don't burn your house down, but one opportunity is to use that instead of switching on the heater. One thing that I know some people do, and I'm thinking about doing it this winter, is when you are about to have a bath, instead of running a bath at the temperature you would like, why not run it at a slightly hotter temperature a few minutes before you want to take your bath, and just let the water cool down naturally, and at the same time it will heat up the room, and it can also possibly increase the humidity in your home so you don't get winter dry skin. That can also help make the air feel just that bit warmer. So consider just letting your water sit for a little bit before using it and let it cool down naturally, and that way you're winning on both sides. But I will say, with this particular one, be careful if you have small children, because the last thing you want is a child getting involved with some very hot water. So take care with this particular one. Another one is, if you have radiators in your house, consider using radiator foil reflectors, and this will help reflect all the heat back into the room instead of it escaping through the wall. Now, I personally use this and I found them to be super efficient. You just have to stick them at the back of your radiator, and I personally have noticed an increase in that. It may not look pretty, but it's efficient. The other thing is, if you don't have access to radiator foil reflectors, another thing you can do is just take a piece of cardboard, wrap it in foil, and place it in the back of your radiator. And that way it will do the exact same thing. There's so many videos on YouTube showing you how to do this, so make the most of that. Another thing you can do to keep yourself warm during this winter is make the most of hot drinks. Start to focus more on drinking hot drinks and less on cold drinks, because the more you heat up your body, the more heat you will radiate. So focus on drinking teas, drinking coffees, just drinking hot water in general, which will also help you feel a lot warmer. Another thing you can do is make the most of soups and chilies. It's synonymous that when it's cold you eat these things because not only do they keep you fuller for longer, the added benefit is that because they take longer to cook and they simmer on the stove for a lot longer, that also heats up the house as well. So make the most of cooking those. They're also cheap and effective and so much easier to make. Another thing that I like to do is, whenever I'm cooking in the oven and I finish cooking, I like to open the oven door and make sure all the heat that would have otherwise been trapped in there waiting to cool down is released into the room, and I have found that makes a huge difference in heating up the room. Just make sure you switch off the oven. Another thing you can do is also make sure all the windows are not only closed, but they are actually locked. I think the process of locking it, just make sure that the seal is completely shut, and that way you can reduce the amount of draft coming in. Another simple thing you can do is make sure all the doors in your house are closed. So I'm talking about your main door, I'm talking about your interior doors, but I'm also talking about the doors in your closets and wardrobes. All of these things are closed to make sure that you are not paying to heat them and that heat is not escaping. Also make sure if you do have a garage to keep your garage door closed at all times to ensure that cold drafts are not coming into your interior doors. So make sure everything is closed, all your doors are closed as much as possible. And whilst we're on the subject, if you do have a fireplace, consider how you can stop the draft from entering the house through the chimney. I personally am not an expert in this particular area, so please feel free to consult an expert, but this is just one area that you need to consider as well, and how you can reduce the amount of draft coming into your house or the heat escaping from your house as well. Also, make sure around your house furniture is not blocking anything that is being used as a source of heat. And conversely, the other option is to make sure you do not have anything that traps moisture near your exterior walls. Now, I know that this might be specifically for maybe slightly older buildings where insulation is not as prominent as they are in the new builds these days, but it's just to make sure that you are trying to reduce as much condensation as possible on your exterior walls and making sure you are giving adequate space for heat to travel. So move furniture away from these exterior walls. Try and utilize rugs on the floors, especially where you tend to have the highest traffic, because that will not only keep your feet warm whilst you're walking, but it will also act as insulation in the areas where you need it the most and the areas that you are utilizing the most in your house. Another tip is to make sure you are utilizing the radiators in the rooms that you are using the most. So there's no point in heating up the radiators in the entire home if you are not using specific areas. What I will say is don't switch off your radiators completely across your house. Just leave them on low in the areas that you are not utilizing, and then have them high in the areas of the house that you are using the most. This is to make sure that you are still looking after your pipes and they do not freeze, but you don't necessarily have to heat up an entire room that you are not using. Another thing is, if you are struggling to feel warm in your house even after all your many layers, another thing you can do is just do a spot of exercise or anything that will get your body generating heat. So what I like to do is, if I'm really struggling, is to give myself a 2-minute challenge to clean something in the house that will require a little bit of movement, and that way I can generate some heat and I can get my body pumping and I'm more likely to feel warmer. So that's something that I always do, so consider doing that. Chores are always a good way to generate heat during winter. You can also make the most of using space heaters. Instead of heating up the entire house, you could just use a space heater to heat up one room. And also, whilst you're at it, if you're in a room, snuggle up. Snuggle up with your family members under a blanket, another way to keep warm and stay warm. So I really hope you've enjoyed these frugal tips. Please let me know in the comments below which one is your favorite. Please make sure to also check out this video, which will show you all the frugal living habits that I have developed over the years and what I'm doing to save money. And until the next video, stay warm, stay frugal, save money. Take care. Bye. Mwah.